Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's predictions on how Game of Thrones will end. This is just a series of wild theories I have on how the show Game of Thrones and the Song of Ice and Fire books will ultimately end. Spoiler warning, although I don't talk about any specifics that happen in the book series that have yet to occur on the show, my theories are partly based on what happened in the books that the show hasn't covered yet. So if you haven't read the books, then proceed at your own peril. So I said in my season 5 prediction video that I'd be surprised if I got even half of my predictions right. Well, here, since I'm making guesses about how a series will end that still has 2 to 3 books left, and a show that has about 3 to 4 seasons left, my predictions are a hell of a lot less to be true. In fact, I'd be shocked if I got any of these predictions right, but I think it's fun to guess, so I'll give it a shot. I remember not too long ago watching some other YouTube videos of people guessing how the series would end, and I remember thinking I have absolutely no idea how the series would end, but the more I thought about it, I started to come up with some ideas that slowly formed into a theory. So rather than build up to how I think the series will end, I think I'll jump right to the end and work backwards from there, explaining how I came to these conclusions. So, I'll jump right into it and start with the big question everyone always asks. Who will ultimately sit on the Iron Throne once everything's said and done? And I know it's kind of a cop-out, but I have two theories on that. I can't decide between the two because I think they're both strong possibilities, but I do favor one over the other. First, I'll explain the theory I think is less likely out of the two, but still strong in my mind, and that is the answer to who will sit on the Iron Throne is no one. No one's going to sit on the Iron Throne at the end because there will be no more Iron Throne. King's Landing and the whole Targaryen legacy will be completely wiped out. Things will come to a head in King's Landing with all these different groups converging on it at the same time while the Lannisters and Tyrells fight amongst themselves. Daenerys, the Dornish, the Ironborn, the Vale, and in the books, young Griff's group will all converge on King's Landing, and the resulting battle will obliterate it, and there will be no Iron Throne left. What will happen is after this happens, the real battle with the White Walkers will occur, and the victors of that battle will each go back and be the king of their respective region, making Westeros the land of the seven kingdoms again. And each kingdom will be self-governing, but they will form an alliance, a type of United Nations, if you will, where no king rules them all, but they will work together in mutual cooperation. That's theory number one. Theory number two, which I feel is more likely, as to who will sit on the Iron Throne, the answer is Sansa. That's right, Sansa. I know I'm not the first person to suggest her, but most people go with like Daenerys or Tyrion or Jon Snow. I'm saying it will be the person you might suspect the least. George R. R. Martin has said many times that the Song of Ice and Fire book series is based in a large part on historic events. Particularly the one known as the War of the Roses, as it featured two families fighting over the throne, the Lancasters and the Yorks. And how did that war end? Well, with a marriage that united the two houses. Now, Martin has said that the Song of Ice and Fire series may not necessarily end the same way, which I think is true because the circumstances surrounding the marriage will be entirely different, as well as the marriage itself. So, continuing off the theory that all these forces will clash in King's Landing and bring about destruction, in this version, King's Landing survives, but all the forces are weakened, and the entirety of the seven kingdoms of Westeros forces lay in ruin just as the White Walkers are about to attack. I think Tommen, Marcella, and Stannis will all die. which I will get into more later, leaving no true heir to the throne, and Tyrion will maneuver to become head of House Lannister and the king of Westeros, or rather, what's left of it. And he will rally the kingdoms to face the incoming White Walker invasion. Furthermore, he will resume his marriage to Sansa in order to strengthen the allegiance to House Lannister and its allies, to House Stark and its allies, thus uniting the Seven Kingdoms together to face their common foe. Tyrion, however, will not survive the battle with the White Walkers, which I'll get more into later, leaving Sansa to rule. And at this point, the Dornish rules will be put into effect where women can rule the throne without men. And after everything's said and done, Sansa will rule the Seven Kingdoms to a renaissance and rebuild after the destructive wars. Part of the reason I think Sansa will sit on the throne is because, to me, she seems to be on the longest prolonged character arc. She starts out as a foolish young girl who thinks everything is going to be rainbows and unicorns, and she'll marry some handsome prince and live happily ever after, but then is faced with the harshness of realities and slowly learns to become a player. She learns from Joffrey, Cersei, Marjorie, and Littlefinger how to play the game, what to do and what not to do, speaking of Joffrey. And at this point in the show and in the book, she's still learning, which is what I mean by prolonged arc. When the third season was airing, I heard everyone talking about how much they hated Sansa because she was so naive, she was so stupid. But now after the fourth season, people are starting to look at her a bit differently. I think she's learning and growing. To be clear, I think the three main Stark children are all on a similar long-term journey. However, I think Bran and Arya's journeys will take them to different destinations, which I'll get more into later. But I think Sansa's leads right to the Iron Throne. Let me get more into where I think the other storylines will end up and address some of the other prophecies, starting with the big ones, the three heads of the dragon and Azor Ahai. I think the answer to who they are is the same, that Azor Ahai and the prince who is promised refers to three people who are going to be the three heads of the dragons. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to go with the fanboy theory here and say it will be Tyrion, Daenerys, and Jon Snow, and that they are all Targaryens. We all know, or should by now, the L plus R equals J theory that Jon Snow's true parents are Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, making Jon Snow Daenerys' nephew. Not only do I think that's true, but I think Tyrion will be revealed to be Daenerys' half-brother. In fact, I think it will happen in the TV show before it does in the books, as I think it will be revealed by Varys in Season 5, but I'll get more into that in my next Season 5 prediction video. So suffice to say here, I think it will be revealed that Tyrion is the son of Joanna Lannister and Aerys Targaryen. Joanna Lannister is already who we know as Tyrion's mother and was Tywin's wife before she died giving birth to Tyrion. But it is my submission, it was not her husband that got her pregnant with Tyrion, but the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen, which it has been revealed that he had a thing for Joanna Lannister and hit on her more than once. It was one of the things that drove a wedge between Tywin and the Mad King. In fact, I'll also submit that Tywin was aware of this. So when he said, "You're no son of mine" to Tyrion, he was being literal, not metaphorical. What he knew what Aerys did was a contributing factor as to why he turned on him during Robert's Rebellion and killed his entire family. Now this is a common theory that's going about. A lot of people don't really believe in it, but if you want to learn more, you can just do a YouTube search, and there are already some videos out there about this. So I think that Tyrion, Daenerys, and Jon Snow are the three heads of the dragons, and thus will be the three dragon riders. And for you book readers out there, no, I don't think young Griff will be one of the three heads. I think he will be a cop-out who isn't even going to be on the show. I can't go into more details without getting too spoilery for non-book readers, so I'll just leave it at that. So, Daenerys and Tyrion will team up first to attack King's Landing, which will be the disaster. But then they will learn they need to head north for the real battle with the White Walkers, and there they will meet up with Jon Snow, who I think will learn of his true heritage before Daenerys and Tyrion does. He'll probably learn through some wildling magic, or Melisandre, or possibly Bran, or some combination. So he'll know he's destined to be a dragon rider, and the three of them will ride dragons and lead the fight against the White Walkers. Now, you might be thinking at this stage, now wait a second, this sounds all like two rainbows and sunshines for Game of Thrones. They're not just going to have the three awesome people team up to save the day and live happily ever after. And I totally agree with, which is why I think although they will be successful in defeating the White Walkers, I think all three of them will die in doing so. And when they do team up, they won't all just be all best pals. There'll be a lot of tension and uneasiness between them. But Martin did say that the ending was going to be bittersweet. And I think having the three most popular characters die at the end will be bittersweet indeed. I think there will be a lot of sadness involved in these characters' deaths. Jon Snow's death will signify the end to the Night Watch's best hope, and the Starks and Sam will be devastated. Tyrion would have died just after becoming king and just after resuming his marriage with Sansa. Perhaps leaving her childless, or perhaps not. Either way, she will actually love him by this stage, so it would actually be tragic. His death is going to be tragic for her as well. And Daenerys' death will signify the ultimate failure in Varys' plans, and he will go to a dark place, perhaps into exile. And of course, Lord Friendzone will be absolutely crushed, possibly even killing himself. So it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows. It's going to be a very sad ending. But more sad than Tyrion, Jon Snow, and Daenerys dying is the dragons are also going to die. Yes, that's right. After bringing back three members of an otherwise extinct species, they are going to die very shortly after. I think the ending of Game of Thrones will be along the same lines as the ending of The Lord of the Rings, where The Lord of the Rings ended with all magic leaving the world and the world being left to mortal men. So too, I think Thrones will end with, in order to banish the magic of the White Walkers, the magic of the dragons will also have to go as well, bringing an end to all things magical, and yes, that includes people like Melisandre. So Daenerys, I think her destiny is to die at the wall. A lot of people dismissed the House of the Undying scenes in the TV series because it was drastically different from the books. So a lot of people just dismiss it as a kind of meaningless crap that D&D made up. But I don't think that's the case, because even at that point, D&D knew how the whole series would end. So they knew what they wanted to work towards and what they wanted to emphasize in the show as opposed to the books. So I think the House of the Undying scenes in the show are relevant. They depicted Daenerys walking through a destroyed King's Landing covered in snow, which is why I think King's Landing will be obliterated. And then it showed her at the wall, so I think it's her destiny to go to the wall and die there, because in that vision she met Khal Drogo at the wall, signaling, she would meet him again in the afterlife. Again, a lot of people think this was just a cool way to bring back Khal Drogo. In part, yes, but in part, I think they did want to foreshadow something different than the books, because things are going to happen a bit differently on the way. So let me talk about Jon Snow, and in order to do that, I'll have to go into book spoiler territory. So if you haven't read the book, you should mute the volume. I'll put up a spoiler tag, and once that's gone, you'll know it's okay to unmute the volume again. Okay, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so obviously I don't think Jon Snow died at the end of the Dance with Dragons. I don't think anybody does at this stage. I buy into the theory that Jon Snow will warg into Ghost, and then Melisandre will use her magic to put him back into his own body. But once this happens, I don't think he'll be a member of the Night's Watch anymore, because the vows say only death can free you from the vows, and technically he died, so. Plus, I don't think the Night's Watch will really want him around anymore. So he'll go rogue and work with Melisandre and perhaps help Stannis to defeat the Boltons, because he no longer has to worry about being neutral anymore. So I think it's in this rogue state he will finally meet up with Daenerys and Tyrion. Okay, if you unmuted it now, it's safe. Spoiler section is over. And since we're on the subject of the North, let me give you my predictions regarding what I think will happen to Stannis. I think Stannis will defeat the Boltons and find Rickon Stark and make him the Warden of the North, and he'll win the entire North's allegiance. But as I alluded to earlier, I think he's destined to bite the dust, meet his maker, kick the bucket. I think once he wins the North, the White Walkers will find some loophole around the wall and invade the North and start raising all hell. Stannis will try to fight them off, and he'll fail, and he will die. As too will the Night's Watch. The Night's Watch will go downhill after the events of the Dance with Dragons and will be in shambles, and when the White Walkers come, the White Walkers will simply wipe out the entire Night's Watch. Although I do think after the three dragons defeat the White Walkers at the end, the Night's Watch will be reformed and will look a bit different. I'm not sure who will lead this new Night's Watch. Maybe someone out of left field who you wouldn't expect, like Theon Greyjoy. But what I do know is Samwell Tarly will be the head maester of the new Night's Watch. As for the Starks, I've already talked about Jon Snow and Sansa, so let me talk about the rest of them. Bran will also help to defeat the White Walkers with his warging abilities. Yes, maybe he will warg into a dragon like everyone wants him to. But he will meet a grim ending as well. Either he'll die outright, or he will live out his life like the Blood Raven, underground, stuck to a tree for the rest of his life. And what remains of the Children of the Forest will also be wiped out, because, as I said, all things magical are going to be gone by the end. Rickon will become the new Lord of Winterfell, and at the end he'll be the Warden of the North. And one last thing about Sansa, I think she will defeat Littlefinger and through her actions cause his death. Like, she won't kill him directly, but she will set plans in motion that causes him to be killed. So thus defeating all of his evil plans that he has. And as for Arya, well, that ties more into some of my predictions for the west of Westeros. As I said, all three main Stark kids are on long-term character journeys. Sansa's will lead her to sit on the Iron Throne, Bran's will lead him to become the new Blood Raven, and Arya's will lead her to become a mega badass assassin. So Arya will be trained up like a faceless assassin and just as badass and unstoppable as them, but she will revert to her Arya identity, and rather than just kill who she's ordered to kill like the faceless assassins do, she'll go rogue and off on her own and kill people for her own agenda. Who will she kill? Well, first off, she'll kill Walder Frey, and she'll totally destroy his house in the same way that the Red Wedding did to the Starks. She'll bring whole hellfire down on them, and then, more towards the very end, she'll kill Cersei. Then she will either be killed, or she'll become so dark and evil she'll just fade into nothingness and become the stuff of legends. So speaking of Cersei, let me talk about her prophecies. As stated above, I think Arya is the Valancourt, which translates into little brother. So she thought it would be, Cersei thought the Valancourt meant Tyrion, because that's her little brother, but it's been said that the term Valancourt could be gender neutral, so could mean little sister rather than little brother, which I think would be Arya, as she's the youngest of the Stark sisters. And as I alluded to above, Sansa will be the prettier, younger queen that will take her place. And unfortunately, as the prophecy states, Tommen and Myrcella are destined to die. Myrcella, I think, will be accidentally killed when the Dornish try some of their tricks, and Tommen, I think, will be beheaded when one of these crazy factions tries to seize King's Landing, maybe the Ironborn. I know it's a shame because I like Tommen, but good people always die in Game of Thrones. That's just how it goes. So Cersei will already be at the end of her rope, and then Arya will come and finish the job. Okay, so that's all I got. I know I didn't cover everybody, but that's as far as I got. After all, the end is still a long way off, so I can't be too specific. And as I said at the start of this video, it's just all wild, crazy shots in the dark. I'll be extremely shocked if I get absolutely anything right here. I'm sure actually the end will be completely different, because one thing George R.R. Martin is good at doing is taking a direction you did not expect. So you should check out some of my other Game of Thrones videos. I do a whole series of videos on Season 5 predictions and other Game of Thrones reviews, so make sure to subscribe to keep up with future videos to come, and thanks a lot for watching.